Hey, everybody, I finally pinned down my brother for a conversation about why people don't vote. Now, he's very passionate about this topic, as you will soon find out. We talk often and we have tackled this topic many times, and he is particularly concerned about the 18 to 39-year-old demographic. He also shares some startling data that you will want to hear and it will open your eyes. Anyway, I thought I'd let you in on the conversation. So take a listen and don't forget to share.
I go back to guerrilla marketing, right? Our kids still need us as parents, whether they like it or not. And the older they get, the more they find out they need us.
Yes.
And so I say, once you've talked to them and you can't get through to them, then you got to go to guerrilla tactics.
And what do they look like?
Then you got to tell them, hey, listen, if you want to come to my house for the Thanksgiving dinner, you need to vote. So either it's going to be a celebration or you can't come over my house because this is for people that vote. We got to get down to that level, get down to that level. I'll disown you if you don't participate in the process because I know what my mama and my mama's mama had to go through so that you could have an opportunity to vote.
Welcome to Get Real with Alexis Jones. On this podcast, we'll dive into real relationships with real people guided by the wisdom and perspective of some of the most seasoned voices in our community, our beloved seniors. Each week, we'll unpack the joys, challenges, and lessons learned about love, family, friendship, and everything in between. This is a space for heartfelt conversations, eye-opening truths, and powerful stories that will inspire and challenge the way you think about relationships. We're keeping it honest, unfiltered, and deeply meaningful. So settle in and let's get ready to get real. Let's jump in. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Get Real with Alexis. I am your host, Alexis, and we have a really interesting topic for you today. We're going to explore one question. Why don't people vote? That's what I want to explore today. I don't want to criticize, but instead unpack it. And why is it that some groups vote more than others? What's the problem? Is it because people feel disconnected? Is it because of just life stresses? They're too busy? Today, I have a special guest. Dr. James Cooper is the senior pastor of Love Fellowship Worship Center. He's a respected leader in his community, and he is a thoughtful voice on faith, leadership, and civic engagement. And he's my younger brother. So without further ado, let me introduce to you and present to you my brother, Dr. James R. Cooper. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Fine. How you doing today?
Fine and dandy.
I'm glad I got a chance to corner you so that we can just have a discussion. I don't get to do this very often with you. So I don't know how this happened that you had a few minutes during the middle of the day. I say that's a miracle.
We'll just call it a miracle and keep rolling.
Okay.
It's sure good to see you, sis.
Yeah, it is. We do talk on the phone quite a bit, but
That's
it
because
is
I call
different
you.
when I
That's
see.
because I call you, not because you call me.
That's true. But you only call me when you get in the car and you're on the run. So you don't call me when you can sit down and talk to me.
Sometimes I wonder, what am I doing that keeps me so busy? But
Yeah.
that's my life.
Well, maybe we need to slow down just a tad, maybe.
Yeah.
Just a
Like
tad.
50 Cent said, I'll sleep when I'm rich.
You're not rich yet?
No, I'm not rich yet. And I'm not really, I can't say that's my goal. I'm just saying when I accomplish everything I need to accomplish, then I'll sleep. But between now and then, We got to get at it every
Well,
morning.
you have to put your sister somewhere in there a little bit on a bigger screen on your calendar. I need to be. I know I'm on your calendar, but I want to be in there in a bigger way.
All right. Well, everybody don't need to hear about our family issues. That's for
Okay.
Judge Wapner or
All
family
right.
court.
Okay, back to the topic. Back to the topic. So, I want our audience to know that we often have these conversations about politics, and we generally have them during the election season, but that's not the only time. But you had a presentation that you sent to me where you spoke to your congregation, and it really got my attention. I listened to it and I thought, let's have a conversation about that. I want to talk about what you said and why you said what you said to your congregation. Let's start there. And then we'll get into what are some of the reasons that people don't vote.
Yeah. Well, what I basically said to my congregation was that we all have both a civic and a personal responsibility to participate in the process. We can debate whether it's fair or not. We can debate whether the elections are rigged or not. We can have all those kind of debates, but we yet have to participate in the process. What really precipitated that conversation was a conversation that I had about 2 years ago with a young lady that manages a lot of the local campaigns. I'll probably put it like this. The campaigns that win, she's typically has something to do with it. I guess she would be a consultant or whatever, but she's a campaign manager for several folks or have managed their campaigns here in the Rochester area. And I was having a conversation with her about this subject. And I made the comment that, well, my congregation, we vote. And she says, no, they don't. And I was like, what are you talking about? They vote. I'm telling you, they vote. And she says, no, they don't. I said, but they do. She said, well, how do you know that they vote? And I said, because they told me they voted. And she said, well, they're lying to you. And I'm like, what do you mean they're lying to me? And she showed me some voter statistics that would indicate, based on the numbers, I can't rattle off all the numbers for you right now, but literally we have a mayor of our city, and this is no shade against our mayor, but we have a mayor of our city that was elected with just over 8,000 votes. That's amazing. So either only church people voted. We're gonna make that. We can say that every church person voted and nobody else voted, or we can say maybe half of the people in the church voted, and half of the other people didn't vote, or more likely we can say only 10% of the people voted, which means that unless the church was a total anomaly where just my church voted, we get lost in the numbers. But the way she broke down the numbers would indicate that even though I may have a high percentage of my congregation that voted, the church itself was not represented, but not to say anything bad about anything worse about the church. We're just not participating in the process. The last time we really had overwhelming voting was when Obama was running. And so it led me to believe that maybe we vote as an emotional practice more than a practical process.
So what did you hope you would accomplish when you stood in front of your congregation and spoke to them as you did, so openly and honestly?
So I think it was Hillary Clinton that made this comment that, matter of fact, just about everything she said is coming to fruition. And also what Kamala said is, I mean, we're starting to see it. But she said elections have consequences. And I believe that much of what we're going through right now is a result of our election process not being supported by all of our citizens. I'm gonna just give you.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Just give you some numbers.
Mm-hmm.
77 million people voted for Kamala. 77 million voted for Trump. 89 million didn't vote.
Wow.
I mean, to me, just letting that sink in
Yeah.
is startling.
Would you repeat those numbers again?
75 million voted for Kamala. 77 million voted for Trump. 89 million did not vote.
That's unbelievable.
Now, well, it's the truth. Now, here's the deal, though. Here's the deal. If 89 million people didn't vote, that it just, if 89 million people didn't vote, one of the things that we are sure about is if you were a Trump Republican, you voted. They're not the ones that typically will say, I'll just sit out the process because it's too complicated. They're not the ones that are going to sit out and just say, well, you know what? I'm just not going to vote. The 89 million people were typically people who were not associated with a party or they were neutral. In other words, and most of those people would typically vote on the liberal side. So the numbers would indicate that we would be in a very much different situation if just people had voted. So I wasn't telling my church to vote Democrat or Republican. All I'm saying is participate in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Just participate in the process. Because I know if you just participate in the process, then you'll be represented. And if really the majority of Americans want Trump, then we got to deal with that. If most of the people was going to vote for a Democratic candidate, then okay, then the rest of them got to deal with that. But we're in a situation now where, as a pastor, I can no longer be neutral. I can't just be nice. We've left that barn. And that's my only frustration with the Democratic Party is I don't know that they fully recognize that the game has changed. We're no longer, out of all my years, I have voted for Republicans and I have voted for Democrats. I would say that I'm the person that I really voted for the person as opposed to the party. And as much as I wasn't sure about the Bushes, I did vote for them. Okay. Because I never thought that they were bad people. They just thought differently. Their beliefs were just a little different than what I thought was really needed. But I thought they were good people. I didn't think they were bad. You know what I'm saying? They weren't bad
Yeah.
people. But we're
Right.
in a position right now where I think we are really dealing with some bad people.
Mm-hmm.
And they are manipulating our society and our democracy to lean toward a king. And that, and the fact that people are still supporting this is really, really interesting. It's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I was, so to answer your original question, what I was really trying to explain to my membership is that we have to participate in the process. And the other point that I wanted to make is I do a lot of work here in representing our church and representing our community with politicians and what do you call them? The
Community
community
organ.
organizations and community organizers and other pastors. I do a lot of work with them and I talk to a lot of folks. And what I was saying was that I need my church to show up at key times because numbers give me influence and it allows me and places me in environments that I wouldn't normally get in and have credibility when I arrive because whoever I'm talking to knows that I'm representing a machine or a group of people. And the
Mm-hmm.
larger that group is, the more likely it is that I'll be heard and respected for what I say. So that was what I was trying to get across to them. We did a Souls to the Polls a couple years ago, and I thought we had a good turnout. I mean, we had right around 250, 300 people. I thought it was a good turnout. But now as I'm looking at it, that was probably not, it was not a good representation. And I think that when we call for these things, we need people to show up. One of the things I said about the civil rights movement was, Martin Luther King came to town and the pastors all rallied together and they brought their people and there wasn't a whole lot of pushback. As pastors, we get a lot of pushback now. Well, it depends on what it's about or I don't really get into politics and, both sides are corrupt and, I don't know what to do. And
There's a couple of things you brought out. One is, I guess the crux of what we're talking about is why people don't show up. For example, show up when you call, when there is a reason, a purpose for us to show up in numbers. Why don't people show up? And you're shedding some light on that or what you've heard from people.
I'll tell
The
you
other
what I've
thing
heard.
is the other question I have is why don't they show up at the ballot box? Is it apathy? Is it that they don't feel their voices matter? Is it there's corruption on both? These are things I've heard. Corruption on both sides. Is it just life stresses? I just got to go to my job, put food on the table. That's all I can handle. And here's the other thing I want to consider. Is it because people are just politically, emotionally exhausted?
Okay.
Or any of that. Distrust, fatigue, feeling unheard. Why is it? And then I want to narrow it down to what you and I talked about when we talked about young people. They're not the only one. If you're talking about 89 million people, they're not the only ones that
Oh
didn't
no.
show up.
Oh no. Oh no. So I've heard all the reasons that you mentioned. I think one you may not have mentioned that I did hear was I don't have enough information. Okay. And so I hear that. Just to add that one to your list, I don't have enough information. I also hear it's all corrupt. And so there's a lack of hope. There's a lack
Mm-hmm.
of, it's not gonna, or a mindset that says it's not gonna make a
That's going to
difference.
matter.
Yeah,
Not
it's not
going to
gonna
matter.
matter. It's all rigged. You know, I hear those kinds of sound bites
Yeah.
that cause,
Let
or
me add some, let me add something as we unpack these reasons. I think it could be so you hit on it earlier. You said there's a lack of information, and there is. There's a lack of people trying to get information. But there's also, do you think maybe there's information overload in some cases? Because the reason I'm saying that is because I'm in Georgia, you're in New York, and we just had a primary on Tuesday. And
Yep.
so early voting, of course, and then the election was Tuesday, the 19th. And a lot of different positions had to be filled from the Georgia Supreme Court to, Senate and House candidates, and a lot of questions on the ballot. It was overwhelming. And I usually vote early, but it was so much information that if I had gone early before I was ready, I would not have been able to vote in many of those categories because I'm not going to vote. I'm just not going to pick a name out of a hat. So I would have left them blank, which is tantamount to not voting at all. Right. So what I did was I printed out a sample ballot, and it took me about a week to kind of go through all those different categories with all those candidates and the questions and see what they meant and decide who I wanted to support. But I'm retired. I'm retired and I have a little time to do that. And I can finagle around the internet enough to gather information. So this information overload, the ads that are coming on TV, the amount of the paraphernalia that shows up in our mailboxes or doorsteps and all of that, the signs at the voting locations, it was crazy. It was enough to make you say, I don't know who to support unless you're talking about the candidate for the Senate or the governor, those main offices. The rest of those offices that are local, that are very important, it was so many. So I'm going back to not enough information to social media and information overload. Does that make sense?
Yes. So here's my advice because you're right. People are busy just trying to make ends meet and do all the stuff they need to do. And so to expect for everybody to be able to sort through all of those texts, emails, all those things you were talking about, here's my default. If you really just don't have the time to do any of those things or to get through all those things, which at this point I'm going to say is probably reasonable. What I would say is find somebody that you trust and ask them. But you gotta trust them. Can't not spend the time to get the work done, to understand what you're voting for, who you're voting for, why you're voting for. And you can't not have the time to do that and then just don't vote. Find somebody that you trust and ask them, hey, listen, man, I don't have time for 30, 40, 50-minute conversation, but man, who are you voting for? And just vote that way. I mean, at
Yeah.
worst case, I mean, no, I know that's not the optimal situation, but do it that way because there is a lot of information. But the
Hmm.
one thing I'm gonna say too is pray before you vote. That'll help as well. Just pray before you
Hmm.
vote. But find
Hmm.
somebody you trust. I believe that as a pastor, it's important that my church understand where I stand on issues and people. We have a race going on right now here in Rochester and for our Senate seat.
Hmm.
And two of the young ladies that are running for that seat are friends of mine. I like them both. They're very different. They're very different candidates, but I would not be disappointed one bit if either one of them got ended up being our senator or representing
Hmm.
us in the Senate. I would not
Hmm.
be disappointed with either one of them. So if you ask me, if you ask, and the reason I have this information is because over the years before they were running, I got to know them then. I was tracking them then. I didn't know that they would be running for Senate. I didn't know that, but I knew that they were people who were active in the community. And I sit in meetings with them, even though I may not have spoken to them directly. I saw how they responded to things. Saw their temperament, and I kind of understood what kinds of things they stand for. And they're very different. They're very, very different. So people have been asking me, well, what are you going to do? What about this one? Or what about that? I'm like, listen, I like them both. I like them
Hmm.
both for different reasons, but by the same token, I wouldn't be mad at either one of them. I love them both. I'd take either one of them over what we have. So
Yeah.
I would tell you, you can't go wrong. That's just my advice, right?
Hmm.
That's my advice.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
if you don't know these people, the only option you really have is to either spend the time reading up, which can be confusing, or ask me. Ask somebody that knows them. Get my opinion. Or it don't just have to be my opinion. Go get somebody else's opinion. You talk about
I
everything
like that
else.
actually. I like that because we need to engage in more conversations with each other about what's going on because that informs both of us if we can
Yeah.
engage in conversation. Well, because I remember at my center, we were talking about the choices for governor, lieutenant governor, I think it was. And one of my friends at the center supported someone else other than who I was thinking of supporting. But we had a conversation about it. And she was telling me why she thought that was a better candidate. And I was telling her, yeah, but these issues, I don't like their position on these issues. My point is, we had a conversation, as you're suggesting, talk to somebody. Don't
Yeah.
just not vote, not show up. Let's talk to each other about how we feel about these different elections and different candidates in these that are running for these offices. I like that idea actually. Are we talking to each other is the question. Are we doing that? And is social media changing our engagement in the process, do you think?
Okay. So are we talking to each other? I'll put it like this. Are we talking to each other or are you just trying to convince me? And I don't want to convince anybody. I want to tell you what I think. I want to tell you what I feel, and then you got to move it from there. But if you want to know what I think, I'll tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I think about, whatever. And if I don't know, I'll just say I don't know, or I'll tell you, hey, my feeling is this, and I try to separate my fact from feeling. But by the same token, if I know more than you know, then at least consider what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And so I also shared with my church at one point that we're in a situation right now where there's just no balance. So I can't continue on with um, a Trump party running the three branches of government. I can't have that. So if I don't know, I'm gonna probably just vote Democrat just because I need to see some balance.
Talk about balance a little more.
Okay. So right now we have the Congress is pretty much split down the middle. So it's almost like the Republicans can almost do whatever they want to do as long as all of them agree to do it at one together. They can just about pass any policy. They can pretty much do whatever they want to do. And they've proven that they're willing to use that power. So I need a little more balance. I need to move that off of just the Republican Party so that they have to cross the aisle and work with the Democrats. And I say that because we have a Republican president in place. And I'd probably feel the same way if we had a Democrat president in place. I would want there to be some balance because right now we have no checks and balances on our president. He starts wars, appoints people into positions that are severely unqualified and inept. He can just do whatever he wants to do, and they don't question him. And I need
Yeah.
for him to be questioned. I need for him to be either removed or forced to be more civil and
And the
responsible.
Constitution intended for there to be checks and balances in the three branches of government, which what I'm hearing you say, they're not even separate right now. They're supposed to be the judicial branch, executive branch, and the Congress. And if the executive branch is running all three branches of government, then we don't have the checks and balances that any president needs,
Right,
any leader needs
right.
checks and balances. And so, yeah, I understand that. Let me ask you before I forget, social media, is
Yeah.
that what are your thoughts about that in terms of engagement?
Okay. So here's the deal with social media. And let's not just say social media. Let's just say media as a whole.
Okay.
If you see what's really
But I say
happening,
social media because social media is an addition. I mean, it's been around a while, but when you and I were younger, media was just TV, right? Or unless we got hard copies of flyers and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes people would show up at your door, but today we've got a lot of other information sources that we didn't have when we were younger. Should that or does that promote more engagement? I don't want to take away your point, go back to your point, but I just want to clarify that we have some systems now that we did not have then. Is that a positive or a negative
well,
or both?
the tool itself is neither negative or positive. The tool is the tool. The issue is when bad people control the tool. And so my concern, and that's why I said it doesn't matter whether it's, television, radio, or social media. When I consider social media, I'm thinking of, you know, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
But lump them all together. And when you have a group of elitist people that are holding that information and distributing it as they will, that's where I have a problem. My issue is with free press. And I think that we are getting to the point where our news sources are being so censored that we may not be getting all of the information accurately and putting us in a position where we can make decisions. I believe that the news stations are and the social media are positioning things to make decisions for us and then giving us just the information that they want us to have.
Mm.
I've been in the
Mm.
news, I've talked to the news people, and I'd say more often than not, what was said and what was presented in the news is different.
So, that's a little disheartening. If we throw a blanket over all of them, there news media that we can trust?
Okay, so I'll put it like this. There are and like I said, there's selfish plug for our spirit dot online, right? It's an online gospel music, 24-hour, 7 days a week station that is unregulated. And we can say whatever it is that we need to say and not have things be filtered or positioned in a certain way. So we don't tell our on air personalities what to say or what not to say. We don't push a particular agenda other than the gospel of Jesus Christ. We don't push any other agenda. So we try our best to get people from all walks of life to come on at certain times and share their heart or their information. We don't lie. You're not going to lie, but you can share your information. We need to do everything that we can to protect our free speech because most people will get their news from television and radio. And we need
Hmm.
to really, really protect that. With the internet, we need to make sure that we're sharing information regularly. So, and I know you're going to run out of time pretty soon, but there's another piece of information that we do really, 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 really need to discuss. And that is the demographic around the the 89 million American citizens that are not participating in the process and who they are.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a demographic between the ages of 18 and 35 that there's a higher percentage of them that are not participating in the process of voting. And my concern is that these are the people who will most likely be hurt the most by policies that are being implemented today and that will last them into their future. I'll be honest, I'm a DEI hire. Okay. And being a DEI hire back in 1984 projected me into a life and a lifestyle that allowed me to educate my children and help other people kids get educated and do a lot of the work that I'm able to do now because I was able to get a good job that may not have been offered to a person of my skin color. Now, that doesn't mean I just got the job. No, I had to perform. It wasn't like it was just easy. It wasn't like you might get the job because you did, but you can't keep it because you did DI. But there was a concerted effort that they had to hire so many Black people in various walks of life to work for a major Fortune 100 company. And they were looking for Black people, because they wanted to make sure they hit whatever they were trying to hit. And so without that, we're already seeing people revert back to hiring majorities or people who look like them as opposed to hiring people who are most qualified, even though they're trying to tell you the opposite. But that's not the case. They're not hiring based on merit and they're not firing based on merit. As a matter of fact, they're firing people at will. So our young people are the ones that are going to have to live with this. I'm concerned about what kind of world my grandchildren are going to grow up in.
Why is the percentage so high in that particular demographic
Or so low in that.
for not voting or not being engaged?
Yeah. I think that they're just ill-informed and they don't feel like it will impact them. I don't know that they understand the severity. And when we tell our children, listen, people died for us to have a right to vote, that doesn't register with them. We tell them, listen, we had to march on, in Selma. That doesn't register with them. Montgomery doesn't register with them. They didn't live through that. Their lived experience is very different than ours. Well, you got a little more of it than I did, but I came in at the tail end. I came in as a direct beneficiary of the civil rights movement. You caught the tail end of it, but I just caught the benefits of it. And so now my children are receiving the benefits of the sacrifice that was made before them, and they have no regard or no life. And I don't know that we did a great job of making sure they understood what was done and why it was done. And so now they come into this thing and looking around and say, well, I don't see racism. Maybe we don't need DEI. Maybe we don't, what's the big deal? Our kids are growing up in very integrated schools where they never experience not being allowed in certain places. They never experienced that. They never experienced not being able to go to certain parts of the restaurant or sit at the counter. They never experienced, they're twice removed from that. Some of their best friends are white people, and they go on vacation with them and all that stuff. So for us to say, listen, racism is something that we have to fight against, they're like, what racism? So they don't necessarily understand the struggle. And when we say stuff like that to them, I don't know that it really registers.
Mhm.
And so, but it's going to have an impact on them because of all the things that are happening now.
Mhm.
So I go back to guerrilla marketing, right? Our kids still need us as parents, whether they like it or not. And the older they get, the more they find out they need us.
Yes.
And so I say, once you've talked to them and you can't get through to them, then you got to go to guerrilla tactics.
And what do they look like?
Then you got to tell them, hey, listen, if you want to come to my house for the Thanksgiving dinner, you need to vote. So either it's going to be a celebration or you can't come over my house because this is for people that vote. We got to get down to that level, get down to that level. I'll disown you if you don't participate in the process because I know what my mama and my mama's mama had to go through so that you could have an opportunity to vote.
Yeah. Besides the guerrilla tactics, what can we do to motivate them? Is it too late? And I want do you think this is all of our young people in that demographic? Because
Oh no. Oh
their
no.
living experience is different. You've got young people who have had these privileges and this is how they think, but there are young people in that demographic that don't vote that didn't have those privileges.
Yeah.
What can we or should we what can we do now? I guess what can we do?
Well, here's what I think.
Well, let's get into what are some practical steps, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. What are some practical steps to help people reengage? Because we get it. We saw it. We saw the dogs being sicked on us. And even though I was a little girl, I saw it and I was confused and traumatized by it. Didn't really understand it then, but I saw it and I understand it now. The demographic that you mentioned, as you said, you came in and then they twice removed came in, reaping the benefits of that. What can we do to re-engage them or to engage them? What can
Yeah.
we do? Because that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to make it important to them. Okay. When we start talking to them about, listen, you're 25, 30 years old, you're either, you're in that age bracket where, you should be buying your first home, right? Well, come to the realization that this is the first generation that will probably not do better than their parents. And so if you want to change that, you got to make sure that you've got political people in place that will help you do that. They're not going to do it for you, but at least create an environment where you're not dealing with the undercurrent. Listen, okay, so I got two kids. One's an educator, one's in corporate America. They're doing all the right things. So they got a good education, they have good jobs, they work hard every day. One thing I would say about them, they all work hard. And based on how hard they work and how much effort they put into this, they deserve to have nice homes and nice families and drive nice and take vacations. I don't know about being rich, but they should be able to do what they need to do. They've done all the prerequisites to get to that level. The problem is there's an undercurrent that's happening with interest rates, wealth transforming, corruption, and all that kind of stuff is happening under the surface that they got to understand it's having an impact on the amount of effort and work they have to put in. Much of what we did, the inflation that we're dealing with right now, this is self-inflicted. If you got a family of 6 or 7, you probably, or you got 3 or 4 kids, that means you got a family of 6. You probably don't want to drive around in a regular car. You probably don't have to have a minivan or a truck or a Suburban or something like that, right? Man, people are telling me it's costing like $100 to fill it up. Well, that's a result of you working hard to pay for it, but somebody else is going off causing wars in other countries that's causing the price to go way up. When you go to the grocery store, okay, yeah, you did what you were supposed to do, but you've got people who are elected into places that are selling our farms off to the Japanese. So you got to understand it does impact you and it's going to impact you. And even those people who are on social services and programs and stuff like that, you got to understand that they're getting rid of that stuff and they're just holding off the impact until after the midterms. And if they do what they want to do during the midterms, listen, you're going to be out there working for some of these people, working for these white people, cleaning houses. If we don't create an economic system for ourselves, you're going to be back and overly prosecuting you as well. So if you step out of line, they're going to get you real good. You need to understand, we elect judges. They're not all just appointed. We elect judges.
Yes.
So you got to participate in the process. You can't complain about, well, you just should have complied. Well, no, you should have voted so that we have mayors that will make sure that the police departments represent the community. So we have to make it important to them. We have to peel back the onion and help them understand how this will specifically impact them.
Yeah. I like that. It kind of leads into what I was thinking as our final thoughts together, that every non voter has a story. Every demographic and even the demographics within that, the ones that you mentioned, they have a story. There is a reason. How do we get to that reason? I think we've got to talk to each other and listen to each other. And as you said, make their experience relatable to them. Should this matter to me? If I'm the non-voter and you're talking to me, you need to listen to my story. I need to be able to freely tell you why I don't vote without feeling like you're going to judge me. And then after listening to me, I need you to tell me why it should matter to me. And that's what you just alluded to. Pending, because it depends on who you're talking with, right?
Right.
Because all of us have a story.
Right. And understand there are some people who want to engage in the conversation, but they're not looking for a resolution.
Right.
Okay. And those are the people that you really just have to let them go. You gotta let them go. You talk to them, but you can't get yourself so emotionally tied up with them, because all they want to do is argue
Yeah.
and bring up not. And what we sometimes do is we get so caught up in them that we just forget it. I'm not going to be bothered with it. No, separate those people out and just say, okay, you're just going to argue. You're not going to change your mind. You're not going to look at things any different way. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking about when I said listening. Because, we've got some people in our family who have totally different positions that we don't understand. And it can be quite upsetting what they say. But I grew to a place where I'm willing to hear you. I want to hear you. And I can listen to you without judgment. I might not be able to convince you of anything, but I still want to understand why you feel that way, why you're looking at it that way, why are you voting that way. I want to understand that. So even if my role cannot be to help you see things from a different perspective, and not just my perspective, but from a factual perspective, right? If I can't do that, I still believe I should be willing to hear you, because don't you think everybody wants to be heard?
Yeah, but you got limited time with me.
Well, yeah,
I
of course,
I
of
have
course,
limited
of course,
time to listen to
of
foolishness.
course, of
And I have
course.
limited time for
Yeah,
you to tell me about, black people just need to pull up themselves up by their bootstraps. I only have limited time for
yeah.
you to defend, people
Hmm.
that we know are already doing us harm. I have little,
Yeah.
I have little tolerance or time for people who wanna talk about one small piece of insignificant information, or that person that's on that social media site is just constantly feeding them articles and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
they just want to fill up my email or fill up my thread or whatever. I have very little. I love, and this is a life lesson, delete. Delete.
Delete, delete,
I love
delete.
that button. I just wish we had a button in life, delete. And then the other button is on the drop down that says block. I like that one too.
Your experience is a little different than mine because you have a lot of people coming at you and you're more active, certainly more active on social media than I am. And the reason I'm not as active as you is because I don't really want to hear all that noise. So I get it when you say I have very little time or capacity for all of that. I get that. So I'm certainly not suggesting that we just sit here and listen to all the nonsense ad nauseum, right? So no, I'm not suggesting that at all. I guess, we started out this conversation with why don't people vote in the different demographics, but we're focusing on young people. I'm concerned about seniors, but I think seniors get it. They may have an inability to get to the polls. There could be some challenges there because we have a whole different set of life challenges that we deal with. But why don't people vote? And how do we, if trust is an issue, how do we regain trust? How do we educate them One of the things that seems to be watered down in our school system is civics. You remember when we took civics?
Mhm.
Civics was a big deal.
Yeah, I
We
remember that
understood.
song. This is a bill. It is only a bill. Sitting on the steps of Capitol Hill. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. It was really clear how the government operated. It really was. I don't think our kids can articulate that the way that we could.
Well, you remember Trump said, I love the uneducated.
Yeah.
I mean,
Education is yeah, education is
there's a
power,
reason.
right?
Yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason.
Knowledge
There's
is
a reason
power.
that they didn't want our grandparents to read.
Yes, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be killed if you're caught reading because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Information is power. So, as we conclude, I always want a resolution to these questions that we ask, and all we can do is expose some issues. We can expose them and hope that people will take a bite and do something different. Something like, okay, where can we start? If I ask myself, where can I start? I can start by getting some information, small bits of information, deciding that I will start somewhere. Maybe the start is register to vote. Maybe that's the start. If we have to start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So as we conclude, can you just in a nutshell help non-voters with getting started to on the path to re-engagement or engagement if that be the case? I'll let
Yeah.
you conclude this conversation.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right. If someone hasn't voted and now they're going to vote, the first thing you do have to do is register. And I wouldn't wait to do that. You can go to vote.gov, I believe, and you can register to vote regardless of where you are in the United States. It'll register you both locally and nationally so that you can that's a start. And everybody should be registered to vote. I mean, matter of fact, I think everybody should. I don't even think you should have to register to vote, but nevertheless,
I agree.
that's a good start. And at that point, I would just say, talk to people you trust, find out what they think about certain issues, and until it's kind of like those are the training wheels, right? And until you're able to do it on your own, just trust the people that you trust,
Mhm.
and get their advice. The Bible says, "In a multitude of counsel, there's wisdom." So talk to the people you trust. And yeah, you might get opposing information or whatever. Follow the person that you trust.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to
Yeah.
start and a good way to end our conversation today. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about your perspective, voting, and things that you're passionate about and the experiences that you've had. So I'm glad that you came. I appreciate you. So thank you, audience. Thank you to my brother, Dr. James R. Cooper. Thank you for listening.